Hello, my name is Pablo Riascos, and welcome to an introduction to corn ethanol as a biofuel. So corn ethanol is a renewable fuel source derived from cornstarch. It is most widely used in the US, where it is blended into different types of gasolines, uh, which help fuel our cars, buses, and any sort of transportation you can really think of. And it being a biofuel, it helps reduce our dependence on non-renewable resources such as fossil fuels. So the biological source is, of course, corn, which is already being grown on large scales across the US. This corn uses photosynthesis to convert light energy from the sun into chemical energy, which is harvested into the production of ethanol. And production of ethanol begins when corn is harvested and grounded into a fine meal. This meal is then processed to release the starch molecules from inside. Afterwards, enzymes are added to break down the starch molecules into glucose. It is important because yeast can only ferment simple sugars into ethanol. And so, of course, yeast is added to go through anaerobic fermentation to produce ethanol and carbon dioxide. After fermentation, the ethanol is distilled to remove water, purified, and then blended with gasoline for further use. Here's a nice diagram to show you kind of. So corn ethanol is already a fully developed and widely used fuel source. Most gasolines in the US contain at least 10% ethanol, which is required by the Renewable Fuel Standard. And although commercialized, ongoing research still continues to improve the efficiency of ethanol and to reduce emissions as much as possible. And they're also working to develop next generation technologies to further this development. So unfortunately, this isn't a completely carbon neutral biofuel because there are carbon inputs that come from the machinery needed to harvest the corn and then process everything. So although there are lower emissions than gasoline, it is not completely carbon neutral, but photosynthesis by the corn does help offset some of the negatives. Plus, it being a renewable resource right now is better than many non-renewable resources available to us. So corn being the main crop, it obviously helps support farms' incomes and jobs as it helps strengthen rural economies. So people who invest their life into agriculture, the higher yield of corn they have, the more they can sell and the more fuel we can have. And so it's kind of a symbiotic relationship. And it also helps influence national fuel markets. Because if you think about it, the better we are at producing this ethanol and the more efficient it becomes. If we're able to grow it here in the US and process everything in the US, there'll be a lot less of a reliance on foreign fuels, gasolines, and et cetera, if we can all just make it here in the US. So communicating its use to the public, fuel pumps have a label that help signify what percentage of ethanol is inside of their gasoline. This is why you'll see E10 or E85 and other numbers at gas stations. Educational materials also help clarify that ethanol blended fuels are safe for pretty much most vehicles, so there aren't many changes needed to be made. And they also help contribute to a cleaner air and reduce reliance on foreign oils, as previously mentioned. So just based off current trends, corn ethanol is likely to remain an important renewable fuel pretty much for the near future. However, improvements can still be made. So increasing farming efficiency, reducing fertilizer use, developing non-food feedstocks, and improving biorefinery operations will make this ethanol much more sustainable, as well as next generation technologies that can offer even lower emission rates are and should be expanded. And so overall, continued innovation will help with the transition towards cleaner energy sources, such as this corn ethanol. So if funding were unlimited, the ideal plan, at least to me, would be to include building advanced biorefineries capable of producing ethanol with minimal emissions. You'd see large investments being directed towards developing corn varieties that grow faster, require fewer fertilizers, and are able to produce starch at higher yields. And all of these actions together would greatly accelerate a shift towards a cleaner and more sustainable energy future. Here are my works cited, and thank you for watching my video.